Blackbeard is one of very few One Piece characters named after a real pirate, with the other being Davy Jones, who's yet to exist as a character in One Piece outside of fan theories, with him sharing the title of the final antagonist alongside Emu, having 2 devil fruits, and just being one of the most mysterious characters in this story. It's evident that Oda is cooking something strange for this character. For starters, his growth as a pirate has been faster than even Luffy's, as he went from having no name or reputation in Skypiea to a warlord by Post-Enies Lobby and to a Yonko during the time skip. However, what stands out the most about him, at least on the surface, is his possession of 2 fruits and the possibility of him acquiring another and still being able to function. With clues littered all across the story, it's become a common belief among many that Blackbeard is the 3-headed guardian dog of the underworld, Cerberus. Some believe that he ate the model Cerberus fruit, but based on the tangent the story of One Piece is at right now, that seems unlikely. Instead, he just might be the very creature himself. So, in this video, we'll be talking about Blackbeard, his origins, his unusual anatomy, and everything that helps prove this theory correct. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Blackbeard's origins. First introduced in the Jaya arc, we meet Marshall D. Teach, or rather Blackbeard, as he finds himself in a local eatery alongside Luffy, trying the same cherry pie as our protagonist. While Luffy mentions how nasty the cherry pie tastes, Blackbeard, in Cohesion, mentions how tasty it is. The very next second, they try the same drink and Luffy calls it out for being disgusting, whereas Blackbeard claims to love it. Once again, in Cohesion, the lighthearted feud escalates and Luffy starts asking the server for 50 pieces of meat. To one-up him, Blackbeard asks for 51 pieces of the cherry pie. Luffy takes things a step further and asks for 52 pieces of meat, and they pass the ball back and forth, trying to upstage each other. While it seems to be a very casual interaction, one thing is for certain, and that's Luffy and Blackbeard have been created to represent 2 sides of the same coin, with both characters bearing the infamous D in their names. But the story of Marshall D. Teach had begun way back when he was a part of the Whitebeard Pirates, and by extension, considered to be one of Whitebeard's many sons. 40 years prior to the beginning of One Piece, Teach was born somewhere in the Grand Line and eventually orphaned. He seemingly had a tough childhood, as there exists a shot of him crying near the moonlight. At some point, he learned about the existence of the Logia-type Yami Yami no Mi, or the Dark Devil Fruit, which had the power to nullify the abilities of other devil fruits. Teach grew obsessed with getting his hands on the fruit and, at the age of 12, found the perfect opportunity to do so when he encountered the Whitebeard Pirates. Teach requested Whitebeard and his crew allow him to join. The request was granted and he became an apprentice to Whitebeard, while the latter and his crew remained oblivious to the true intentions of their new member. 2 years later, when the Whitebeard and Roger pirates clashed with one another for 3 days straight, the battle ended in a shared festival, where the members of both crews had a banquet with one another, while Roger, in secret, revealed the truth about the One Piece and the Will of D to Whitebeard. Around this time, Whitebeard mentioned how his crew member Teach had the D in his name. Roger knew that he was too early to find the One Piece and expected another member of the D bloodline to reach Raftel in the near future. With Teach being in the mix, there began a possibility of this fated person being him. During the banquet, Roger's apprentices Shanks and Buggy discussed a strange rumor about Teach. Apparently, he had never slept a single day in his life, which should technically not be possible. The years passed, and both Teach and Shanks grew up, which eventually resulted in a clash between the once apprentices of the world's most famed pirates. We know that Shanks is extremely powerful, and yet the clash between him and Teach ended with Shanks intercepting the scar on his eye that resembles a deep claw scratch. In fact, Shanks went on to state how dangerous Teach was, as he was able to land the attack on a guarded and vigilant Shanks. Teach eventually became part of Whitebeard's 2nd Division, which was headed by Ace, the son of Roger, and as a result, bore the D in his name as well. With time, Luffy had also entered the seas as a pirate and made a name for himself, as he got his first bounty after defeating Arlong. Soon after, the commander of the 4th Division in the Whitebeard Pirates found a devil fruit, but this was no ordinary fruit, it was the Dark Fruit, the one Teach had joined the crew for. The dynamics among the Whitebeard Pirates was extremely tight-knit and familial. A crew member killing another was a huge taboo, but of course, Teach broke it, as he just had to get the Dark Fruit for himself. So he murdered Thatch, ate the fruit, and fled the crew, which led to Ace setting out on his own to find Teach, as he had betrayed their father. Having consumed the Dark Fruit, Teach adopted the moniker Blackbeard and formed his own pirate crew with members such as Lafitte, Doc Q, Jesus Burgess, and Van Auger. He was quite fearsome even before getting the Logia, as he'd been able to land the scar on Shanks, but With his new powers, he'd entered a different class altogether. Following Crocodile's defeat at the hands of Luffy, a new position for Warlord had opened up, and Lafitte recommended his captain, Blackbeard, to the Marines. Eventually, Blackbeard and Luffy met one another in Jaya for a short period. When Teach clashed against Ace, who was very powerful by the way, he used the nullification ability of the Devil Fruit to defeat Ace and hand him over to the world government. He went on to become a warlord for such an act despite not having a bounty, as he had managed to beat Ace while the latter was subsequently imprisoned in Impel Down level 6, destined to be executed as he was the son of Gold E. Roger. This triggered the events of Marineford. As a man, Teach had always been somewhat cowardly and sneaky. Instead of catching his fights directly, he lurked in the shadows, looking for the right moment to strike. Ambitious and calculating, his status as a warlord was necessary for the execution of his plans, as it gave him access to Impel Down. So, when the breakout involving Luffy trying to free Ace took place, Blackbeard recruited several level 6 prisoners, namely Pizarro, San Juan Wolf, Katarina Devon, Vasco Shot, and the former jailer Shiru. He even choked Blackbeard to the ground while being on the verge of death himself and having half his head blown off, and sent a shockwave using his earthquake powers through Blackbeard, which the latter managed to survive. In the end, Whitebeard stated how Teach was not the person Roger was waiting for. Ace had been killed by then, and Luffy, despite not being strong enough for the war, had made a name for himself among the top dogs thanks to his personality, motion, actions, and conqueror's hockey. It was evident that Luffy was the one, and Whitebeard knew it, philosophically throwing Blackbeard out of the race. Blackbeard's unusual possession of 2 devil fruit. How do these fruits operate? Soon after, Whitebeard passed away and Blackbeard and his crew covered him up with a dark cloth. Teach went under the cloth as well and came out after a while to display the powers of not just the dark fruit, but also Whitebeard's Tremor fruit, which should be impossible. Any individual consuming more than 1 devil fruit would normally explode and die. As Jabra from CP9 had previously mentioned, the consumption of 2 devil fruits would cause the devil within each fruit to fight the other, with the end result causing the user to explode. Now, we don't know whether devil fruits actually have a devil within or not, but we'll get to that later. Either way, Blackbeard has proven himself to be physically unnatural. As a result, Teach became the first person that we know of to wield the powers of 2 devil fruits at once, with one being able to reduce anything to nothingness and the other having the power to destroy everything, thus creating the era of Blackbeard. So let's talk about his fruits and how they work. The dark fruit. Logias operate by altering the element of the user's body at will and giving them access to control, generate, and use a large amount of that very element. Think of Ace using his fire, Smoker using his smoke, Akainu using magma, and so on. The dark fruit falls into this very category and allows Blackbeard to generate and operate darkness reminiscent of a fiery black smoke and a liquid all at once. The only exception is that Blackbeard's body does not turn into the element he generates to make him intangible. What he has instead is an infinite space within his body which is made of darkness. The ability operates with the properties of absorption, as Blackbeard can use an attack known as the Black Vortex to essentially suck in his opponent from afar. The gravity of this attack is enormous and destroys everything in its wake. Once Blackbeard gets a hold of his victim by absorbing them into the darkness, the fruit allows him to nullify their devil fruit powers. He did this with Ace, making him unable to use his fire abilities. He did it once again with Boa Hancock and Amazon Lily when she was just about to launch her Perfume Femur attack on Kobe. The ability of his opponent will remain nullified until Blackbeard himself releases them and breaks physical contact. All in all, the fruit is known for being a void that devours everything and returns them to nothingness. So far, however, the returning everything to nothingness seems to refer to devil fruits only because it's not like the physical matter of the individual under Blackbeard's grasp breaks down. However, the fruit has a weakness due to Blackbeard being incapable of turning intangible, as it makes any attack that's landed on him hurt way worse than normal. Considering the fact that with such a drawback, he was able to withstand a beating from Whitebeard despite having a tremor sent through his body which cracked the ground, Blackbeard has something going on with respect to his physical body that makes him exceptionally durable. The Tremor fruit. Unlike the dark fruit, Whitebeard's Tremor fruit is a paramecia type. These are the most commonly available devil fruits and alter the anatomy of its user like other fruits. However, it cannot transform its user into an element. Awakened paramecias, however, seem to mimic Logias to an extent, as seen from Doflamingo turning everything around him into strings and controlling them in Dressrosa. With the Tremor fruit, one doesn't become an earthquake itself, but can generate humongous quakes by breaking the space in their proximity. The fruit is so powerful that it has the ability to destroy the entire world. The user sends insanely powerful shockwaves through the air by cracking it. Whitebeard showed this off as he reached Marineford, with his shockwaves bringing a tsunami. Striking general areas also ends up causing great damage as it creates earthquakes via the tremors it produces. At present, Blackbeard is evidently looking for a third fruit, which is why he attacked Amazon Lily to get his hands on Boa Hancock's Love fruit and tried to acquire Trafalgar Law's Ope fruit. He failed against Hancock, with Rayleigh saving her and Hancock herself making it clear that her fruit is only so powerful because of her beauty, so it would be useless in the hands of someone like Blackbeard. How does he have 2 devil fruits? Blackbeard's strange lineage. It's set in stone that Blackbeard has a very peculiar and unusual anatomy, which is the reason behind him being able to possess 2 devil fruits. We learn about him not sleeping from Buggy. In Marineford, Marco mentions how Teach always had an atypical body structure, which is directly responsible for allowing him to possess 2 fruits. This is brought back in Egghead after Saturn is punched far away by Luffy and lands near Katarina Devon and Augur, who were stationed in Egghead during the Buster Call for some reason. Devon touches his leg and claims that the mission is complete, giving us very little information to work with. Saturn questions why someone like her had chosen to become a subordinate to another, referring to Blackbeard. To this, she mentions how Teach is special. On the surface, this could just refer to personality until Saturn makes his remark when he says how his lineage is special as well. This tells us that there's something about Blackbeard and his bloodline that seems to make him more intriguing than Lunarians and Buccaneers, since Saturn himself is acknowledging the race is special. This makes us wonder if Blackbeard's lineage is somehow related to the world government, since Saturn has referred to other races in derogatory manners, as seen with him claiming that Buccaneers are born to be slaves. For him to call Blackbeard's lineage special in particular might show how it's not the type of lineage Saturn looks down upon. That aside, how he consumed Whitebeard's fruit is also suspicious. We know that when the user of a devil fruit dies, the abilities of the fruit manifest in a nearby fruit, as seen in Punk Hazard, turning a normal fruit into a devil fruit. In Whole Cake Island, however, we see Big Mom acquire Mother Carmen's Soul fruit after she accidentally eats her on her birthday, thinking that the mother and her friends are Semlas. So eating the fruit isn't the only way to gain its powers. Those powers can be passed down by consuming the person themselves. For Blackbeard to eat the Tremor fruit, he would have had to wait for the power to get transferred to a random fruit. Then he'd have to find that fruit and consume it. It's highly possible that Blackbeard ate Whitebeard's heart or something of that nature while under the black cloth, but the mystery of one person having 2 fruits still remains, bringing us to the next part. Is Blackbeard a Cerberus? One Piece often takes heavy inspiration from mythology and folklore from around the world. Elbaf takes inspiration from Norse mythology. Luffy's connection to the monkey factor seems to be inspired by Chinese mythology with respect to the sun god, namely Sun Wukong being a monkey, and also Indian mythology with his Badrang gun attack referring to Lord Hanuman, who is also Simian. There's Boa Hancock with the Greek references, as her abilities mimic that of Medusa's to a certain extent, so it wouldn't be unnatural for Oda to introduce the guardian of the underworld in Greek mythology, that is, the Cerberus, into his story. In fact, Thriller Bark did have a very bootleg target version of a Cerberus that the Straw Hats were running away from, with Skypiea initially feeling like a detour but then pivoting itself to be the master of foreshadowing. It wouldn't be surprising for Thriller Bark to fall into the same category. With everything going on with Blackbeard, the theory about him being a Cerberus is popular among fans as the clues are right there. For starters, Blackbeard's Jolly Roger is a 3-headed skull. He also has 3 tail ends of his hair tied right up and 3 guns placed under his belt. There's also the claw-like mark that he left on Shanks' face, which wouldn't have been suspicious if Blackbeard donned a claw-type weapon, but he doesn't. The scar looks like a creature caused it. There does exist a canon artwork of him for a cover page wearing a Wolverine-like weapon, but the weapon has 4 talons instead of 3. So, had Blackbeard used that against Shanks, the latter would have 4 parallel scratches, but he only has 3. Talking about things taking place in threes, there exists Japanese philosophy behind it. There's a Japanese proverb that's been mentioned in the Emmy-winning series Shogun. It's about every man having 3 hearts. The first heart is the one that the man shows the world. The second is one that he shows to those that are close to him, such as his friends and family members. And the third heart is hidden and buried deep within. Only the person himself knows what lies within that heart. Since One Piece is at the end of the day part of Japanese media, it's natural for Japanese sentiments to be heavy. To top that off, Blackbeard doesn't have a one-track personality in the sense that his behaviors contradict one another. Blackbeard's courage allows him to quickly rise up the ranks, becoming the most fearsome pirate of the worst generation. But he's also a coward, as proven by how he reacted when Whitebeard was thrashing him, as Teach suddenly switched to playing meek as he begged Whitebeard to release him as he was once his son. Blackbeard's also very reckless, catching smoke left and right, but abiding by his time to do so. He's more fearsome to the public, but on occasion, he's been seen being a bit silly. For example, in Jaya during the cherry pie scene, and later while on the way to the knock-up stream with his crew where their boat got destroyed. However, judging by this theory, we're yet to see his third heart. That is, the one he hides deep within. In Jaya, after Blackbeard's speech to Luffy, Zoro, and Nami on hearing about them looking for Skypiea, Luffy and Zoro were visibly put off by Blackbeard's presence, with Luffy calling for them to leave. In fact, Luffy did not move until Zoro and Nami began to leave, probably because he knew that the man in front of him was dangerous and he needed to stay back until his crew moved. When Nami asked who the man was, Luffy mentioned how it's a them. Now, this could refer to the Blackbeard pirates as a whole, but Luffy hadn't seen any of Teach's crew members. That them could simply refer to Blackbeard being more than one person, attested by Zoro agreeing to it. If Blackbeard is a Cerberus, he essentially has 3 heads, with each of them being able to acquire the ability of 1 devil fruit. This is why Blackbeard seems to be looking for a third, and it's also why Blackbeard doesn't sleep, or rather, his 3 sides take turns sleeping. That way, one can always remain awake. In Egghead, we got a grasp of how the abilities of Emu and the Elders work, with the latter appearing to be zones in their transformed versions, but not quite, since they're not introduced as zones, regenerate indefinitely, and can be summoned via markings akin to pentagrams, almost as if they're straight from hell. Emu has a devilish voice and the same arrow-shaped tail that the devil so often is portrayed with. We know the underworld exists since Brook claims to have returned from there, at least his soul did, so it wouldn't be a stretch for the demonic guardian of the underworld to exist in the flesh. Previously, there had been a theory about Blackbeard having consumed the mythical zone Dog fruit, model Cerberus, which allowed the user to eat 2 other devil fruits. However, if what Jabra said was accurate, then consuming the second devil fruit, in this case the dark fruit, would result in the devil within both fruits fighting one another. Blackbeard seemingly searching for a third also allows us to theorize that there's space for a third ability, weakening the theory about the Cerberus being a zone fruit. With respect to the fact that the Elders seem to be yokai itself instead of people with particular types of zone fruits, Blackbeard's being connected to the underworld is possible. In fact, if he was a Cerberus due to his fruit, then his lineage would not be alluded to so much. The somewhat malevolent allegations on a character also seems to have some connection to the number 3, such as Zoro uses the 3-sword style and wears 3 earrings. He's known as a demon in the form of a human, wields Enma, which refers to the king of hell in Buddhist mythology, and has a form known as Asura, with Asuras being like demons in Hindu and Buddhist folklore. In fact, he seems to have some connection to the underworld, with the Grim Reaper coming for him after his fight against King. The other example would be Sanji, the 3rd Vinsmoke brother, and narratively the strongest Straw Hat, and the San in his name literally being the Japanese word for 3. Sanji is afraid of the person he can become if he falls prey to his Germa genes. He's even mentioned that he's willing to become a devil and fight the god Enel to protect Nami and Skypiea. And you know what else? He generates flames as part of his attacks and even has a move known as Hell's Memories. We don't know what Oda is cooking, but it seems like he's connecting the number 3 with devilish themes that go beyond devil fruits while using the same for the Gorosei and Emu. In fact, devil fruits might be a watered-down imitation of such factors, which brings us to Luffy, whose fruit bears the name of a god. With Luffy and Blackbeard being 2 sides of the same coin and Blackbeard's lineage being such a huge mystery, it's possible that he's a descendant of Joy Boy, which is why Emu had stabbed his picture. Assuming that he is, we see why he's the antithesis of Luffy. Luffy isn't a descendant of Joy Boy, not that we know of at least, but he has inherited Joy Boy's will, which is why the Nika fruit chose him and he managed to awaken it with Gear 5. Meanwhile, Blackbeard has failed to inherit Joy Boy's will despite having the D in his name. He's more tyrannical and more akin to the world government in that sense, as he plans to dominate the world instead of liberating it. So, while Luffy is the warrior of liberation and sun god Nika, in a sense, his antithesis Blackbeard is connected to the underworld, with all signs pointing to him being a Cerberus. Marvelous verdict! Only time will tell us the truth about Blackbeard, which is something that applies to most concepts in One Piece since Oda has managed to keep so many things a mystery for over 20 years now. That being said, it seems like the only way to defeat Blackbeard at this point is through an absurd level of mastery over Haki, since that seems to be the biggest weakness of the pirate and his crew. Because how else do you fight someone who can not only nullify devil fruits, but also seems to have ties to the devil itself. With that, today's video comes to an end. What are your thoughts on Blackbeard? Could he really be a Cerberus? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Until next time, this is Wizard Wheezy signing off for now, but thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.